We're going to go ahead and get started. Just to make sure, before Mirka gets into the presentation, can you all please confirm that you can hear me by typing in the chat box? Can you keep the chat box up, Salam, so I can see? Awesome. Just let me know if you can hear me right now. Okay, great, loud and clear. Perfect. Okay, so once again, thank you all for taking time out of your schedules to join us today. It's really my pleasure. I think most of you who are on the call are program alumni, so we want to welcome you. If it weren't for all of you completing the barrage of surveys over the course of your fellowship and the follow-up surveys afterwards, and also providing us with so many excellent materials for case studies and other evaluation activities, we wouldn't be having this meeting today, so thank all of you. I guess I should introduce myself. From the names, I think I've spoken to most of you or met you in person, but this is Jeremy Coates. I'm the program lead for the Greek Diaspora Fellowship Program, or the GDFP. I'm based here in Washington, D.C. With that, I'm joined by some of my colleagues from our other foundation who work on this program and our other foundation-funded initiatives here at the Institute, as well as some of our other monitoring evaluation team members. With that, I wanted to turn it over. As many of you know, IIE does have a specific department called the Research Evaluation and Learning Department, REL, and they conduct a lot of our program monitoring activities using some really great methods and all the expertise that we have here at the Institute in administering and managing initiatives in exchange programs. Today we're joined by Mirka Martel, who is the Senior Director for the Research Evaluation and Learning Department here at the Institute, and she'll be going over the learnings that came out of these surveys. So without further ado, I'll just turn it over to Mirka and look forward to the presentation.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to have the opportunity to present to you today. This is quite an exciting project for us. As Jeremy mentioned, I lead the Research Evaluation and Learning team here at IIE, and we've had the privilege of working with the Greek Diaspora Fellowship Program for about 3 years now, and especially doing monitoring and evaluation for the first 2 cohorts. So it's such a pleasure to be here today. What I'll be sharing with you is a presentation that we have done of the results of these first 2 cohorts. You'll see first the methodology that we use and the approach that we take to monitoring and evaluation for this program, which will probably be interesting to some of you to understand a little bit the bigger picture of why we do what we do and what the goals of our monitoring and evaluation activities are. And then I'll go over some of the findings and talk to you a little bit about not only the findings, but also some recommendations that we had. The exciting part is that we have a new cohort that will be starting, and so these are always opportunities for us to learn from monitoring and evaluation as well. I see a number of great alumni on the call. Thank you so much for joining. I think hopefully it'll be inspiring to see the fruits of all of your labor during your grants. I also see program staff, so it's so wonderful to see Dylan from the Budapest office on the call, on the webinar, and Sue, I see that you're in DC. Thank you all so much for your continued support, without which we wouldn't be able to do our activities. For those alumni who participated in the evaluation, you may remember Zara Mirza, who worked on this project. She has gotten an exciting new position, and so she is no longer at IIE, so I am really presenting these findings on her behalf. But we are very excited to have a new M&E officer, Alessandra Hodgelik, who is in the in IIE's DC office, who is joining today as well. And great to see other colleagues like Chris Gray as well. So welcome, and I hope that this is going to be exciting for all of you. My presentation will be about 20 minutes, if that. So I really would like for you all to just take it in and take notes and think of some questions for me. I would love to engage in a discussion afterwards of what you think of these findings, or any reflections you have on how we do monitoring and evaluation, and what we can learn from this program. So with that, let's get started. So to start off, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the program itself. So IIE supported 49 fellowships, so 49 fellows over 2 selection cycles. This covers selection cycles in between January 2017 and December 2017. There were 16 Greek universities that were part of the program. There were 15 female fellows that were participating, and there were 34 male fellows. From the 49 fellowships that were arranged, the most popular fields of study were medical sciences and engineering. Other fellowships focused on biology, computer science, history, or the arts. So this is just a quick overview of the program population we were working with when we embarked on monitoring and evaluation for this program. So what were our evaluation goals? Why were we conducting all of these activities? Well, we really had 3 goals. The first was to look at the achievement of the program in achieving its goals and its activities. So for this, we asked some questions like, how successful has the program been in facilitating effective and mutually beneficial engagements between fellows and host institutions? This is one of the goals of the program and is meant to create a mutually beneficial exchange between these 2 stakeholders. We also wanted to assess the expected outcomes and impacts of the GDFP. When this program started, we worked with the Niarchos Foundation and with our IIE program team members to map out the types of trajectories or outcomes we hoped that the fellows would have. In particular here, we were looking for institute-wide improvements in the Greek host institutions made as a result of the program. We also really focused here on those collaborations after the program. Were there curricula that were approved? Were there academic publications, particularly those that were perhaps new research that had stemmed from the research that was done as part of the fellowship? And was there capacity that was being built in the Greek institutions? Finally, a third goal of our evaluation was to assess program implementation. So looking specifically at the activities of the program and identifying lessons learned and what could be improved. There are 2 reasons we do this for any evaluation. One is because we want to improve the program. No program is absolutely 100% perfect. There are always things that we can improve. And so we want to learn from the findings and we want to inform potentially future cohorts. The second reason is that we want to inform other programming. If we have a particularly interesting finding, we would like for other programs to know about it. If there are other similar fellowship programs, they can learn, but we can also inform the field. And one of the things I will do a shameless plug for at the end of this presentation is that the report that was done as part of this public evaluation is public. It's on IIE's publications page. And I encourage you to share it, to read it, to give it to colleagues, because I think it's really important to learn about the outcomes and impacts of these types of programs. So with that, a quick note on our methodology. We used a mixed methods approach, meaning that we collected both quantitative data through surveys and qualitative data through interviews and focus groups. Let's talk a little bit about the qualitative data. We did 13 interviews and we did 8 focus groups. This is when we went to Greek institutions and we spoke not only to host collaborators, but we also conducted focus groups with students at the Greek institutions and also colleagues of the host collaborators. We wanted to do this to triangulate some of the findings from the surveys. The surveys are done before the fellow goes on fellowship, after the fellow comes back, and then 3 months afterwards. So there was this importance of triangulating data, meaning we wanted to get data from different data sources. So the quantitative was 6 surveys. We do those pre, post, and 3-month surveys, not only with the fellows, but also with the host collaborators at the Greek institutions. While data was collected from both fellows and host collaborators, as I mentioned, we really have a wide range of perspectives on this program that I'll share with you today. So we spoke with the fellows and the host collaborators using surveys and interviews. Then we spoke to host colleagues and host students using focus groups. And then we also did a limited number of interviews with advisory council members to get their understanding of the outcomes and impacts of the program, and also program staff. Program staff was particularly to learn about program implementation. So we really spoke to a range of stakeholders in order to understand and be able to answer the questions stemming from our evaluation goals. So now into the findings. I'm going to talk through 5 sections today. First, we're going to talk about activities. What were the fellows able to achieve during their fellowship? This focuses mainly on curricula, research production, mentorship. Again, mainly this focuses on what achievements they were able to make during their exchange. Then we move to impacts. This is very interesting. These are all of the impacts we have not only on the fellows, but particularly on the Greek institutions. What capacity building happened, what knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer happened. So we'll go over that. Networks. We'll share a little bit and show you a little bit about the social network analysis we've been doing. It's a very interesting and graphic way for us to show the types of connections that fellows and Greek institutions were able to make. Site visits. We'll do a few takeaways from the fieldwork. Sarah had the opportunity to visit 5 institutions in Greece, and we'll learn a little bit about the perspectives of the people she spoke to. Finally, I'll talk a little bit about recommendations. You can read about these more in the full report, but it'll also be nice just to touch on a few considerations we have for the next stage of the program. Okay, let's dive into the findings. So during the fellowship, since the exchange, 27 GDFP related research products have been published or shared. Many of these are based on research that was done during GDFP. You can see here that the total number of products is the light blue, meaning we had 15 academic articles, 11 seminars or workshop, and 1 website or blog. We then wanted to look at whether this was clustered with certain fellows or not. So you then also see the average products per fellow. A total of 15 research studies have been conducted through GDFP. It's important to note that 46% of these have started new research projects that were not initially part of the fellowship. And these projects vary greatly in thematic areas, ranging from the development of computational tools for surgical planning to examining social networks of Jewish Holocaust survivors. And as you can hear from a fellow, it really was, the research itself was an important and valuable component for the program. Let's move now to curricula. Since the exchange, fellows have contributed to 7 curricula at their host institution. This could have been classroom-based curricula. This is defined as those curricula that focus on identifying lecture materials, content, appropriate textbooks for a single course. or fellow revise program-based curricula, which is broader. So that's looking at courses that would be necessary for a specific degree. Since developing a new course requires more time, stages of approval, curriculum development really centered on updating existing coursework or adding new modules. On average, each fellow contributed to at least one curriculum. A couple of fellows have even had those curricula formally approved and implemented as part of existing programs. These vary in discipline, ranging from neurophysiology, digital marketing, or as you can see here, teaching. Another area or way in which fellows contributed was through teaching and mentoring. So in total, fellows mentored or taught 44 students during the exchange. And again, we have to be careful because this was very much related to the type or purpose of the research that the fellow was doing as part of their exchange, or the type of activities that they engaged in while they went to Greek institutions. So it's not that each fellow was it was anticipated that each fellow would be able to develop a curriculum and do research and teach and mentor. The idea was that they would be able to do some of these activities through the various focal points that they had of their project. So it is important to keep that in mind. Nevertheless, the fellows did, or some fellows did mentor and teach students. And on average, each fellow mentored or taught about 3 students. 83% of the fellows have continued to mentor students. And this is a really exciting finding we have, not only for this program, but for other diaspora fellowship programs, which is really that the mentorship of students continues even when the fellow returns home. And I think that it's important to keep this in mind in terms of the sustainability and the linkages that are created as part of this program. How are they mentoring students, or how do fellows continue to mentor students? We found that it's mainly through research supervision. So if a student is working on research, the fellow can continue to mentor them on this research, or informal guidance on professional development. We find that fellows often can provide information about higher education pathways or graduate education pathways, or they could just provide informal guidance on a student's professional development. And I really enjoyed this quote as well from a host student who said that the fellow really brought a level of commitment or a level of listening and understanding and a learning to the students at his host institution. As you may have noted from one of the goals, we really want to focus on as one of the impacts, the impact on Greek institutions. So were there areas in which host collaborators felt that their institutions benefited from the fellows exchange? And we found that the indication here was quite high. 88% of hosts saw an improvement in their research practices. So quite a positive finding. We found that the highest level where hosts saw improvement was in institutional research. In research practices, the collaborators indicated that institutional change was more likely to occur if their fellows' background was relevant to their institution's needs. So particularly when there was high alignment of the fields that the fellow and the host institution were working on. This was especially true for instances in which fellows' research expertise was highly valued and not present at the host institution. So it set the stage for the development of new teaching modules and for students and faculty members to be taught or mentored in a new research topic. And I really like this quote, which speaks to the fact that a host faculty was working in a different field, but they were able to use some of the methods. So there was a knowledge transfer of not just the specific knowledge in that field, but some of the methods, research methods that were being used. Most research collaborations were interdisciplinary in nature, so they encouraged the expansion of networks and a knowledge transfer across various different departments. The impact on fellows was high as well. The greatest impact that fellows felt was on their knowledge and understanding and perspective on Greek higher education and learning about the capacity of Greek institutions. 93% of fellows derived great personal value from the program, and I think this was palpable not only in our quantitative data, but also in our qualitative data. They learned new ways to approach their research and develop curricula that was relevant to Greek higher education specifically. An exciting technique that we use to look at networks and the expansion of networks is called social network analysis. So what you can see here are the types of networks that fellows had prior to the program and after the program. What you can see here is that the blue circles are fellows, green circles are contacts at the host institution, and gray circles are contacts at other institutions. And you can see quite the number of connections that were created. Fellows significantly expanded their networks during the exchange. Before the program, you can see there were 161 connections. After the program, there were 313. Network development not only took place, though, at the host institution, and I think that's what you see. The balls themselves are quite small, but there is, if you look closer, quite a combination of both green balls and gray balls. So we're looking at contacts and networks that are created not only within the host institution where the fellow was, but also with other institutions. And I think that that's quite important to note. In contrast to fellows networks, host collaborators didn't report a greater number of professional contacts after the program. But this is fairly unlikely since network development for host collaborators is somewhat dependent on the fellows. So the fellows were building networks that connected their host contacts with their home institution, potentially another institution. Host collaborators were cognizant of this limitation, and they're proactively seeking ways to kind of bridge those gaps and create more networks, even as a result of that fellows exchange. What we wanted to know further out from the program is, are these networks sustainable? It's wonderful to see that while they are in Greece, they're making these connections, and it's potentially even logical that they would be making these connections. But we wanted to see whether these types of networks are sustainable over time. So what we did is that we not only looked at the pre-survey, which is before the program, and the post-survey, which is after the program, which you see here, but we then also looked at contacts 3 months after the end of GDFP. And here we chose 2 fellows, mainly because it would have been very difficult for us to show you a picture of all 49. So what you can see is that we looked at the new connections that were made right after GDFP, and you can see these for 2 fellows, and then 3 months after the program. We actually found that for these 2 fellows specifically, and it was not uncommon for other fellows as well, they had made even more connections, and their relationship with these existing contacts had strengthened. Strength in social network analysis is shown by the size of the line. So heavier, thickness of the line. If it's a thicker line, that means it's a stronger connection. Their relationship with existing contacts had strengthened. Across all fellows, the average number of Greek contacts per fellow was significantly higher 3 months post-exchange. So this wasn't a finding we were seeing only in a few fellows, but really one that we were seeing across the program. And fellows had greater connections if the length of their stay at the host institutions was longer than average. And this is understandable as well, and we find in other programs that if the program length is longer, then they just have the time to meet a number of more contacts. Just for your knowledge, the average stay of the fellow was 38 days. Okay, a little bit about our site visits. As part of the evaluation, we conducted five host institution visits in Greece. This was done in December of 2017, so now a year ago, or a year and a half ago. Several factors were taken into consideration in selecting these institutions to ensure representativeness and diversity by institution type, gender of fellow, fellow's field of study. We considered whether the fellow was currently on site or was an alum of the program to capture both long-term impacts and short-term outcomes. So what did we find in visiting these institutions, and what were host collaborators and faculty saying? Well, they told us that the fellows' expertise played a key role in advancing the knowledge base at the host institution. Some of the topics that the fellow brought to the institution had never been previously taught. And so there was a huge value to the fellow having this, or to the host institution and the fellow having this opportunity. It was interesting to note that host institutions typically had difficulty attracting outside lecturers because of financial constraints. They have very little opportunity for international collaboration, specifically because of how much it costs for a fellow to come and do a faculty exchange. They expressed how difficult it has also been to acquire research grants, since Greece is typically competing with more advanced institutions or other European countries. And so this was a value that they really saw, or to have a fellow come to collaborate on research, which they see as a constraint that they have otherwise. However, many of them also voiced concerns, and one of the concerns that they voiced was about sustainability. Because of their financial limitations, some institutions did have the concern about the fellows' participation or the fellows' exchange being quite short, and the idea that how will these collaborations remain intact if there are no additional visits? And I think this was also came from a perspective of their financial limitations. So knowing that they already have financial limitations, they don't necessarily have the funds to, for example, have the fellow come out again. So I think that this was a concern that they saw in terms of the potential sustainability of the program. What were the students saying? So the students were really excited because it allowed them to explore new research topics. As stated previously, some of them had been working on new or learning about new topics that they didn't know before, and it also allowed them the opportunity to work with a professor or a fellow from a different country. And so another area was also just personal inspiration. Students felt that the experience of working with a US-based professor meant so much to them. And I think I will also add here that so many of them were inspired by the fact that they were from the Greek diaspora. And I think that this is a landmark and a specific aspect of the Greek Diaspora Fellowship Program, to have professors who are of a Greek heritage. And I think that this really resonated with the students. They had personal inspiration in getting to work with somebody who was Greek or who was of Greek heritage. Recommendations. I'll quickly go over 4 recommendations that we had as a result of this study. And you can learn more about these also in the full report. We did talk over these both with the board and also with Jeremy and the rest of the program team. And so I think that whenever we have recommendations, we always like to consider the pros and cons of implementing them, and also consider with the program team what else can be done to really improve the program. So as was noted by the host collaborators, but also what we saw from the networks, it is potential that sustainability of the program could be increased if there were the options of follow-up visit grants. For some of the fellows, it was a short exchange. Again, the average length was 38 days, but there were some that were shorter, there were some that were longer. And when it was a shorter grant, it really was a very short opportunity to work on a research project. So particularly for those, there is the desire to have follow-up visits, or to have at least an opportunity for a follow-up visit. We also looked at the recommendation around incentives for host institutions. This is something that has come up in other programs as well. The incentive for the host institution, of course, they see a huge value, but we also did see these financial constraints that they are up against. And so one of the things we looked at when we looked at recommendations was whether there are any incentives that could be given to the host institutions, particularly if they are really constrained in terms of their ability to participate in the program. Pre-exchange meeting, we also saw that there could be value in increasing kind of the opportunity for a pre-exchange meeting for the fellows and potentially even host institutions to really talk about the topic or the project that they will be working on together, particularly when it is a short exchange. We found that it is difficult to kind of hit the ground running. The fellows usually need a number of days, if not a week, or if not more, to really acclimate themselves when they get to the host institution. And then that kind of, that discussion starts. And for fellows who went for a very short time, 3 weeks, it was very hard, because by the time they really acclimated or got everything at the institution, got access to everything at the institution that they needed to, they were already potentially halfway through their exchange. So one idea was to have some preliminary meeting to discuss their projects beforehand. And the fellowship lengths. So as we saw, this really speaks to the ability to get more done while they are in Greece, while the fellow is in Greece, but also the sustainability and also the creation of networks that for those fellows who are on their exchange longer, they were able to create more networks. So I think that is something to consider. Though for some fellows also the shorter exchange is very important, because they might not have the possibility to leave for a long period of time. So this is a pro and a con for those who already have a very specific research project and know that 3 weeks is sufficient, that can work. But when it is more exploratory, more time, there may be an interest to have more time for the program. So that's it. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to share some of these findings with you, and I would love to turn it back to Jeremy and to see whether anybody has any questions or whether any reflections on what was shared today. I do want to share, Jeremy, I'm thinking maybe for those who attended the webinar, we can share this PowerPoint with them, because at the bottom here is the link to IIE's publications page, where you can read the full report and download the full report for free in a PDF, and read the entire report and share it with your colleagues. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back to Jeremy now so we can facilitate a discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Mirka. Okay, great. Yes. So if anyone has questions, of course we will be sharing the links to the report again, as well as the slides from this presentation, and probably to the entire alumni group. So if you have any questions, please do type them into the text chat box and for Mirka to answer. And Mirka, if you don't mind, I want to talk a little bit about the recommendations and what we, the program team, did with them for this next iteration of the program, because this is direct feedback from the hosts and fellows, so we really take it seriously as something that can really inform how we're going to work in the next stages. But I always have to frame these kinds of discussions with, as a program team and, dealing with the realities of budgets to know that we can't do everything. So we have to get really creative and think of ways, that we can address these recommendations while still maximizing the number of fellowships that we're offering, because that is, our main purpose. That's our main mandate from the foundation, is to bring in as many fellows as possible to Greece and to the benefit of those institutions. And many of you as alumni who are on the call today, you may have attended the alumni webinar that we held about 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago, wasn't it, Salam? Yeah, a little while ago. And if you haven't had a chance to view that, reach out to us and we can send you the link. It's a private link, so to hear in, and there's a little bit more detail about the things I'm going to discuss now. Of course, one of the recommendations that Mirka mentioned, the first one, and seems to always be so popular for our diaspora programming, is the opportunity to do follow-up grants. So, we did include this as a provision for the new cycle, where we are offering alumni follow-up grants to return to the host institution, for another short-term period. Hopefully, many of you on this call will take advantage of this as an opportunity with the program. Then, of course, on top of that, we created this separate fund for conference participation, so that hosts and fellows can attend conferences and jointly present, on their collaborative research from their project visit, or any ongoing collaborative research that they've been doing. So this is another kind of follow-on activity. That is also an incentive for the hosting institution, right? Because this doesn't just, moving into Mirka's second recommendation, those follow-on grants for conference participation don't just go for the fellow, but they're for the hosts as well. So you all can, we probably will announce this sometime in early spring. We haven't really figured out a timeline for that yet. For Sue or Sarah and I have not figured out exactly when we'll do this, but it will be coming, and you'll be notified. All the alumni will be notified. On top of that, another incentive that we're offering for the hosting institution, because we heard the fellows when they arrived at these institutions, some of them had more resources than others. Some of them, were lacking in basic supplies, while others really just needed, some extra lab equipment or a few instruments that they could use to do field research. So what we did was create a materials allowance for the hosts. So the materials allowance will accompany the fellow, the selected fellow, on their project visit, and those, the host and the fellow can make the decision on what the best use of those funds are, whether it's, simply buying toner for printers, or, buying, a few licenses for SPSS or another software, for example. We've had many inquiries about that as a possibility. So that we haven't set a figure for the materials allowance yet. We're waiting till we can consult with the advisory council, who we'll meet with, of course, in November, when we're making selections from this cycle 3. Another piece that Mirka mentioned, which is always a little bit of a challenge, is the idea of a pre-exchange meeting. So we really built this into the new grant at multiple stages, in hopes of encouraging more collaboration between the hosts and fellows before the arrival. So it starts at the application phase now, where we've asked the host to commit to making sure that if the fellow is selected, that there will be appropriate introductions made across the institution, and that the host will do a lot of activity beforehand to kind of lay the groundwork, because the fellows, we don't want them arriving and on a 14-day fellowship and spending the first 8 days trying to figure out exactly who is their best point of contact at the institution. So the next place where we built this in was, of course, through virtual pre-departure orientations, specifically for the hosts. We will be working with the hosts, and our colleagues and partners at the Fulbright Foundation in Greece will be doing some pre-departure activity with the hosts when they're selected, just so that they can, brainstorm the best ways of, preparing for the fellows visit. So that's another level where we've built that in. And then, of course, well, I'll talk about sustainability at the end, but also another recommendation that Mirka said is we need more time. We need more time. Of course, I think that some of our fellows would stay for a year if they could, or longer, but we were able to increase the time frame of the fellowships from 14 to 60 days to 14 to 90 days. So this means that our fellows can go to pretty much close to a full semester. They have a semester sabbatical. So this is another opportunity. I wanted to highlight a couple of other things that we're looking at for the program. We have, taken even greater steps toward being more inclusive by including the Greek diaspora from Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. We received inquiries from these places during the last 2 cycles of the program, and we thought it'd be important to kind of open it up to colleagues there. We also expanded the eligibility for the GDFP scholars. No longer is there we have the requirement that you needed to physically be born in Greece to participate, or in Cyprus to participate in the program. We've pivoted there, and the requirement is Greek citizenship. So because we know that many Greeks were maybe born abroad, or grew up in Greece and then went abroad again, but still have incredibly strong ties with home. So we wanted to make sure that they were eligible to be part of the program too. So these are just some of the ways that we seriously took your feedback. Of course, looking at sustainability, this was really emphasized, of course, in this report that Mirka just covered, as well as by Stavros Niarchos. They do want to see us, take as many steps possible towards sustainability. So with that, we will be launching in November, around our advisory council meeting in Athens, a new academic association for the Greek diaspora and host collaborators and those who are interested in international collaboration in Greece. So look out in your inbox. We're still developing some of these. Developing some of these materials, and Sarah is actually responsible for leading the Diaspora Association in this initial phase. So I know we'll be reaching out to many of you over the coming months to gauge your interest and hear your ideas about how to really lay a solid foundation for this association, as well as we'll need a lot of volunteers. So, because we want it to be led by you all, not just by IIE. We're really just here to help you get it set up and then turn over the reins. So those are just some of the innovations and that we've been able to implement in this cycle. So I think something Mirka and I and Sarah previously had talked about was, really making sure that all of you know how much we value your input, and that, even though it probably took you 2 hours to complete all these surveys, which I know is a sacrifice, because 2 hours is a lot of time, that it wasn't for nothing. We really took your recommendation seriously, and we're definitely excited to see some project requests come in from our alumni hosts, as well as resubmissions of scholar applications from our alumni fellows. The deadline for this cycle is July 31st. Yeah, July 31st. So please do apply. Reach out to us at greekdiaspora@iie.org with any questions on that. And you'll hear from Salam here, who is our inbox guru. So she's there to answer any questions you may have along the way. So thank you. Mirka, doesn't seem like we've gotten too many questions yet.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I mean, I think it's been such a great collaboration, and I think especially as we move into future cohorts, but also exciting opportunities for the alumni, I think it really shows that we're using the monitoring and evaluation effectively to really inform and improve the program. So I want to thank the program team for that.
Oh, thank you, Mirka. We really appreciate it. Yeah, the collaboration and the ongoing conversations about how to better the program. And I know the advisory council really appreciates all of you and your feedback. And the most exciting thing that they talked about when they saw this report was the social network analysis,
Yeah.
because one of the more unique components of this project, that, as you know, Stelios Vasilakis at the SNF has said before, is that usually it's individuals from Greece coming this way and not the diaspora returning to Greece. So this is a very novel program. And so seeing, the multiplier effect of those relationships going the other way with this new idea, I think is, really impactful.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great.
All right. Okay, I guess with that, we can wrap this up. And as always, if you have questions, it's greekdiaspora@iie.org. So thank you a lot, Mirka, and all the other IIE folks, and especially all the alumni who are on the call. We couldn't do it without you.